Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Hi. I don't hear anything, but hey, today we're talking about the benefits of fractional help in your organization, specifically in the CFO arena. Fractional help work brings some serious value to your organization while you're experiencing change. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Our mission is to discuss and deconstruct insights from top-performing entrepreneurs and industry experts. Every week, we uncover tested tactical solutions to solve your company's toughest hiring problems. Today, our guest is Jean Latu, the founder and CEO of Ingenio Solutions, a consulting firm focused on accounting and finance. She leads a talented team of experts in finance and accounting who work with the clients to solve problems, create efficiencies, and improve the bottom line. Jean has worked on projects for companies like Car America, Coldwell Banker, and Marriott as a consultant. And she joined Jefferson Well as the director of finance and operations and led their finance and accounting practice. She grew the practice from 40 consultants from 5 and increased the annual revenue from 10 million from 1 million in 3 years. Pretty impressive work, Jean.
Thank you, Rick.
Welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So we're going to cover a few things. We're going to talk about high-end temps, right?
Yes.
Like what's fractional recruiting? And then when and how to engage fractional help. So let's start with what is the difference between fractional and consulting and interim, and educate me on this.
What are all those words?
Yeah.
So consulting is a pretty wide field.
Yeah.
And you can do consulting in different ways. Fractional is just another word for part-time. So you can provide part-time CFO services or part-time CIO.
So you're essentially like kind of doing it in block time, whatever hours it might need to be.
Yeah, it may be a couple hours a day or a week.
Okay.
It might be a day a week. It might be a couple days a week, or it might be 3 days at the end of the month that are critical for that business.
Got it.
And compared to interim, which is usually on a full-time basis and you're filling in for a critical role, somebody's resigned or they're out on leave. Interim is somebody who works full-time with the company, inside the company, to help them keep the trains running, so to speak.
Got it. So a fractional person would be primarily more a high-end executive,
yes,
as opposed to it's an upper echelon of consulting, essentially.
That's true. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it is still kind of in the same staffing business. We're still providing temporary services, but as executives, we just have consultant names for them. So
Okay.
we're calling them fractional, or I just use the word part-time.
That's the word du jour for
It is.
year 2018.
Yes.
And
yes.
17, right?
It's what you'll find splashed on the business headlines.
I've met a lot of fractional people at networking events. Everybody's a fractional something.
Right.
Yeah. So
And usually what that means is that they will serve 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 businesses at a time.
sure.
They might be small businesses, and maybe under 5 million in revenue, or they could be startups.
Yeah.
And so you might find one CEO or one CIO who's working with several companies, and one of those companies may start to take off, and they might have to provide
back
less
to their
service
own.
to the others
Yeah,
to be
got
able
it.
to serve that one.
So the ones who are paying their bills, they're spending their time with. Okay, I see
That's a
that.
driver.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so are these people appropriate to use in startup environments?
They are.
Okay.
It's a good way to get some high-level talent, some really good experience and expertise on a budget.
Yeah.
Right? So as a startup, you're very careful with your dollars. And so a fractional person, maybe using them 1 day a week or a couple days a month, may be a good solution to help you stay out of hot water,
Yeah.
and go down the right path.
Especially on the finance side, because that's where
Yeah.
most companies get in trouble.
Exactly.
Okay. So I can
Yeah.
see where there's a huge demand for that.
Yes.
Awesome.
There is today.
All right. So what types of roles do we typically see in the fractional realm? I mean,
It could be marketing. Your chief marketing officer might be part-time. It could be HR, so your CHRO,
Yep.
Chief Human Resources Officer.
Okay.
A CEO can be part-time. They may be working with 2 or 3 startups. CIO,
CTO.
yeah, CTO,
Really
any
every
C-level executive, I believe, can be done on a part-time basis.
Awesome. And now we're going to focus on CFOs because that's your
Right.
brand. That's where you thrive.
That's right.
Absolutely. All right. So, when should a company engage a fractional person?
Usually it's when they're starting to either one, experience growth, and the growth is often more than they had anticipated. So it tends to put a burden on the back office, so to speak, and often accounting is considered the back office.
Okay.
So they might find that they might want to be more strategic about accounting and finance when they see a lot of growth. So bringing in a part-time or a fractional CFO can help them strategize about that.
Absolutely.
Another time that they may want help is if they have problems, if they have cash flow problems,
Yeah.
if they can't get financing. A CFO can come in and help them look at the financials, try to find a way to present them in a fashion that would be acceptable to a bank, a lender, or another source of funds.
Got it.
So that expertise would come in the form of a CFO. It's not often that your bookkeeper will be able to help you with that.
Yeah, I would imagine not. Okay. So now I would imagine, like, really anytime you're experiencing some sort of change, if you don't have a full-time CFO, you really need to have some sort of person you can pull from, right?
Right. I recommend it. Often smaller companies will rely on a bookkeeper to keep their books on QuickBooks. And basically they do your day-to-day transactions. They make sure your invoices get paid, and they may send out your customer billings and make sure they're collected. They keep up with the cash account, etc.
Yeah.
But when you want to be more strategic, or you're worried about your profit margins, maybe they're sliding. Maybe you need to cut expenses, but you may not know it. But if you can bring in a CFO who can analyze the financials for the last few months, the last few years, that has a lot of information, they can help a CEO or business owner make those kind of decisions.
And they can also help with planning, right?
Yeah,
And that's
definitely.
something that companies don't really focus a lot in on. They're just so sucked into the day-to-day
Correct.
what's happening that, hey, we should probably plan out when we're going to hire and how we're going to hire and why we're going to hire.
Mm-hmm.
Like how I looped in hiring.
Absolutely.
No, and how we're going to grow and how we're going to spend our money, right?
Right. So I always recommend preparing a budget, which is just an annual budget. But looking ahead 3 to 5 years, there's no reason not to plan 3 to 5 years ahead. You can make some assumptions and create your forecast and your planning from that.
Yeah.
Those are 3 to 5 year budgets essentially. You're not married to the numbers. The actuals will come in and be what they are, but you can make decisions when you know what you expect in the future.
Yeah. Okay. So you're experiencing growth. I would imagine when you're on the flip side, when you lose somebody too, is probably pretty important.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth on the second part of the show. So the services that you offer, what is kind of the typical sweet spot for Ingenio Solutions?
We offer 3 types of services: interim, which is where we're filling in for a key person who's left the organization or is on a leave; fractional or part-time; and the third area is projects. We might help with a software implementation. We might be a project manager for that. I've got one person who's excellent at data. He helped us move data from an old system to a new system.
Really?
So those are types of projects we work on.
Huh.
We helped a company document their policies and procedures. We interviewed their whole team and came up with some standard policies and procedures so everybody's doing the same thing.
Okay.
And they're consistent.
Got it. So what about the kind of concept of triage? I would imagine, like, when somebody leaves abruptly, that's when you're getting a call.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I always appreciate companies that recognize that if a key person has left unexpectedly, that there might be some problems if somebody's not in that role.
Yeah.
And that's where we can step in and kind of help smooth things out. We can keep things running, and we can ensure a smooth transition when they do hire the next person.
Got it.
It gives the company some breathing room to identify what skill set they want in the next person they hire.
Yeah.
It might not have been a match with who they had, and so they have a chance to make a change. And then they bring in a recruiter to help them with that.
I know a few of those.
You resemble one.
I know, right? I do a little bit. So we're talking to Jean Latu, the CEO of Ingenio Solutions. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about solutions on how to, like a little bit more detail of how and when we should really engage fractional help. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard, giving you access to recruiting techniques that will help you hire key talent to build your company towards real success. Rick is a recruiting executive and entrepreneur who's been successfully recruiting in the aggressive Silicon Valley technology landscape for the past 2 decades. After a very successful stint at Apogee, he founded Stride Search in 2012. Based on a lean efficiency model, Stride has uniquely positioned itself as a leader in retained search for the most critical talent hires within a small organization. Whether you're a startup executive or recruiting professional, by listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard, you will walk away with skills to help you attract and hire great talent. Now back to Higher Power with Rick Girard.
Welcome back to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and today our guest is Jean Latu, the CEO of Ingenio Solutions, and she is an awesome CFO, by the way. Fractional CFO. So we just discussed a little bit about what fractional help is and how it works a little bit. Now we're going to explore like how you find those resources and then really walk through the best solution for each type of change that come through. So, and that's going to be all on you, Gene. So, so you're in a company, you've had a scenario. I mean, obviously if a CFO leaves, I'm going to call you, right? But where does somebody find resources for other types of talent, and how do they find you?
So the easy way, Google.
Yeah, sure.
Interim CFO, interim CIO.
Sure.
Because you'll find a variety of delivery methods. There might be individuals out there that are marketing themselves to do that. There are firms like mine. I have a pool of talented CFOs and controllers ready to go. So I have the solution already.
Sure.
And there's other larger firms that provide the same thing.
Okay.
So you can use your network to ask for referrals. That's often word of mouth is the strongest.
Yeah, that's where they usually come from, is referral based, right?
Yeah, if somebody's had a good experience, they'll be very happy to refer you.
Okay.
And if they haven't, they just wouldn't say.
Yeah, I mean, you're relying on Google to actually come across, what may or may not be the best person.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
if you're a larger company and you need, say, 3 sources,
Yeah.
that might be one solution. There's not one single organization that just has interim
Like key people.
C-level folks.
Ooh, that would be an interesting idea. Have a referral network based on like interim folks. New business idea. All right. I gotta stay focused on what I'm doing now. Okay, so networking events. So there's organizations like Octane and what's Scott Hamilton's
Executive Next Practices. Yeah.
And maybe some of the other organizations.
Harvard Business School has an association in Orange County that is a great opportunity for networking.
Okay.
Usually high-level executives.
Got it. Okay. So those would be great ways to find resources for these types of people. Okay. So now we're going to spend a few minutes. We're going to walk through like each kind of change and kind of best strategy to go about fixing those problems. All right. So let's start with, I think M&A was kind of like the first thing. So
M&A, whether your company's going through a merger or acquisition, either your company's being acquired or doing the acquiring, it results in change.
Yeah.
And we often our consultants help before that transaction. Maybe we do the due diligence. We might help them uncover issues in the company that might affect the sales price.
Sure.
But oftentimes we help them afterwards in two ways. We help with the integration. Basically in accounting, there's always accounting systems, and we want to pull everybody onto the same accounting system. So
do you have
we
to
need
check
integrate.
over everything to make sure the books are all copacetic as well? But that's
Usually
happened.
that's due diligence
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, okay, got it.
But in integration, that's when you find out the real story.
Got it.
That's when you can peel back the onion and see, certain transactions might be eyebrow raising.
Got it.
But mostly it's a systems effort, and then it's a people issue. So sometimes people will stay, and sometimes the long-term plan is that they'll be eliminated because the purpose of doing an acquisition is to streamline your costs.
Yeah.
In addition to growth.
Yeah.
Obviously you want to grow, but you can cut your back office costs.
Yeah, you're typically keeping the people just through the transitionary period, right?
Right, which might be 60, 90, 120 days.
Yeah.
So if somebody leaves unexpectedly in that period, I would recommend retention bonuses to try to keep them around. But if they leave, they have a fantastic job offer. You're not going to stop them from going. So that's where our consultants can help fill the gap until the integration is complete and the
Okay.
transition to the new company is complete.
So that's typically within that window of somebody leaving.
Right.
Or if they actually have to eliminate the position right away.
True.
Yeah.
True, because they might have to achieve their cost savings very quickly,
Yeah.
and that might be one way to do it.
You're probably more cost effective than keeping that person on board who's
It's
already in the
possible.
role. Okay. Got it. All right. So M&A, what will be the next
The
kind of
next time is when a key person in your accounting shop leaves,
piece? Okay.
whether that's the CFO or whether it's the accounting manager or the FP&A, financial planning and analysis person who does your budgets.
Okay.
You may, if one of those key people leaves, it's going to help you more than anybody else if you're the leader of the organization to have somebody fill that gap until
Yeah.
you can hire and replace them with the right person.
And that's the work that's typically done on the hour, like just a few
It's
hours
on an
a
hourly
week.
basis.
No, but just a few hours a week or what have you. It's not.
Typically
No.
on an interim, that's a full-time.
Okay.
It's fractional is when it's a smaller company with a smaller budget, and they need to use the expertise of a C-level person, but on a part-time basis, so it fits into their budget better.
Sure.
Ideally, I'd love every company to have a CFO, but it doesn't always make economic sense to have that.
Yeah. I'd like to have a CFO, but it doesn't make economic sense.
Right,
you know,
right.
when you're a small shop.
Yeah.
But I think taking advantage of it being a small shop, being able to have somebody come in for an hour or two a month and just make sure everything's copacetic, it
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense.
I recommend it.
Sure.
It's also somebody who can be a partner to you, the business owner,
Yeah.
and give you recommendations on how to approach a financial matter. One of my CFOs, helped set up a 401k plan. They helped negotiate an insurance claim. Things that,
Negotiate an insurance claim?
yeah, yeah, absolutely, for good resolution.
Yeah.
They had a salesperson in the business who left and took some of the business with them. So they negotiated a settlement so that they got paid out on some of the commissions from that business that left.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so CFOs are very good at negotiating and looking out for the best interests of
probably
the company.
It saves a ton on attorney's fees, I'm sure.
Yes.
Because once you involve an
yes.
attorney, that just explodes.
Well, they may know when to bring in an attorney
Yeah.
to tackle the legal matters. But if it's a financial matter or has a financial impact, generally the CFO is going to be pretty good at that.
Okay. So there's a lot of benefit outside of just looking at the books.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the common misconception would be that a CFO would just be concerned with the financial statements and how the company is doing from a financial perspective. But there's an awful lot of things that impact the financials, right? Working with a sales team to develop commissions,
Yeah.
right? A commission plan or incentive plan.
Yeah.
Working with HR and IT to make sure that they have the financial resources they need to execute the strategy of the company. Operations, we can negotiate contracts with suppliers.
Yeah.
So there's all different ways that a CFO can have an impact on the business.
That's great. So the next scenario would be what?
The next scenario would be that's a good question.
Those are really
Uh,
the two main ones, right? Like leadership change and
M&A
M&A.
and yeah, and when key people resign. Oh,
Okay.
the third one, I'm sorry, is when there's a project. All right, so an easy one is when you're implementing software, you're going to change your accounting system. So we have folks who have done those before.
Mm-hmm.
They can project manage and lead those changes, or they can replace a person on your team so they can go on to the project team. So they can literally backfill for that person, do their job while they're working on the future software implementation.
Okay.
So that's a good example of a project.
So whenever you're kind of changing systems, really.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why would a CFO be good for that, though? A fractional CFO be good for kind of...
You know, what's interesting is every CFO, because of the number of companies they've worked for and their experience, brings different experiences to the table.
Sure.
And one of the guys on my team has, while he's been a CFO and controller, he has a passion for systems and improving the information that a company can get from their
Got
new
it.
systems.
So he's that guy who went into finance and accounting probably to keep his parents, appeased.
Probably.
And then, but he's got the passion for technology.
Yeah, exactly.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, and he's really good behind the scenes. You know, accountants are good usually at the financials, reading them, understanding them, but this guy is really good at just understanding how to make the back of the computer work. Really, it's all the settings in the systems that when you're implementing new software can make or break you.
Got
so
it.
he gets a handle on that pretty quick.
Got it. So are there any specific industries that are a little bit more important than others for these things?
I would say every business, no matter what the industry, needs financial guidance.
Yeah.
So it's not industry
Otherwise, you don't
specific.
have a business.
Right. I'd say the larger the company, the more a CFO is needed.
Yeah.
The smaller the company, the more you can use a fractional CFO. And really, your budget will dictate.
And I don't think a lot of small companies know that.
Right. They don't often realize that there's help out there for them on a part-time basis.
And that's kind of interesting. It may be a good idea for you to go to network to some of these smaller Octane or something like that for some of their launchpad type companies. Because I think they're just kind of bringing in the bookkeeper and having that handled, and that's
and the bookkeeper is great at getting the daily transactions into a system like QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And tracking things. They're very good organizers, but they don't often have a good understanding of accounting. They may not have a degree in accounting, and so they don't know what debits and credits mean and how they fall onto the financials and how one affects the other, and that you have to have an equal debit and a credit in a transaction.
Now you're getting all technical on me, and
I know.
But I love it. You make it sound great. I would bore that stuff up, I'll tell you.
I worked with a bookkeeper to try and solve some problems with a general ledger that she was working on, and every single time I'd get out the T account and start doing the debits and credits, because that's when you hear the phrase balanced books, your books are balanced, it means your debits equal your credits, but only certain types of things can be a debit and only certain types of things can be a credit. But ultimately, it falls out on your P&L and your balance sheet.
Got it. Wait, isn't a debit when your money's coming out and a credit is when it's going in?
Sometimes.
Okay.
But that can change depending on the nature of the account.
Got it. All right, so we have a few minutes. Let's, if you can, plug in what type of companies that you tend to work best with, and give you a few minutes to talk about, what would be a good client for you.
Yeah, so typically we work with companies going through a lot of change. They might be experiencing a growth spurt. They might have been acquired or are doing the acquiring. Or they might be losing some key personnel. They can't retain them. The market's hot right now. As being a recruiter, you know that better than anybody.
We're at 2.8% unemployment here in Orange County.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And at the executive level, it's got to be less than that. It's got to
right.
be, I don't know what that's at, but
it's just hard to find the talent.
Yeah.
And so being able to use it on a part-time basis or borrow it on a full-time basis and until you can find the right person, we can help with that. So I often like to say that companies going through change are our best client because we're the person to go to help stabilize, especially the accounting and finance shop. And sometimes that can flow over into other areas.
Is that often the piece that's like goes into disarray the quickest?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes, because if you don't have a good attention to detail within your shop, if you can't rely on your financial statements, then that's the beginning of disaster. And we often go in and do cleanup projects, right?
Yeah.
If they haven't been reconciling their accounts, there could be hidden problems in there.
I bet.
That can create some unexpected surprises that are not welcome.
Well, the first problem would be the people leaving, right? And then the second problem would be, especially on the book side.
Yeah, especially if they've hired people who don't know what they're doing, who may have represented themselves well on the resume, but when it comes to actually doing the debits and credits properly, it may be a problem.
You heard it here first, kids. Hire right.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're just about out of time for today's show. Jean, thanks so much for your time investment, and I wanted to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it, Rick.
Now, what would be the best way for somebody who's looking for a fractional CFO or an interim CFO to reach you?
Either through my website, ingeniosolutions.com.
Spell Ingenio, please.
INGENIO.
I like it.
All right.
Solutions.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or you can give me a call, 949-529-2970. I'd be happy to take your call.
And she always picks up her phone. She's like fantastic that way.
I try my best.
Absolutely. All right. So I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. A quick thanks to our team, our engineer, Paul Roberts, the illustrious one. Our producers, Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and Kim Iverson. To listen to this show and any past episodes, you can check us out on that's HIRE, powerradio.com, or Higher Power Radio on iTunes. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook as well at Higher Power Radio Show. Or you can follow me on Instagram at RickGerard1. We have another great show lined up for you next week. I'm not going to say who it is right now because it's kind of a big deal. So I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and I want to thank you guys for listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Gerard on OC Talk Radio.